Yeah.
Oh, it's this. It's like, oh, throw on the box. Christmas on the front porch.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Well, I saw a something that was like you keep all your empty Amazon boxes. I saw an April Fool's thing. Did you see that?
And it was all gifts like our.
You put them all on the front. Yeah. All right. What's up, Mom?
Hey.
All right. Well.
See you. How you doing?
Everybody ready to get started? We can kind of get Dan rolling, and then we can, when Dan's wrapped up, we can chat about whatever. So, all right, everybody. I think he's met everybody already, but Dan Piner with NC Septic Inspections. So he's been doing septic inspections for me for years, and it's nice because that's what he specializes in. We were talking before everybody got here how so many home inspectors now became one-stop shops years ago. But to get certified in doing septic inspections doesn't mean you are a specialist in septic. So just because you can do a septic inspection doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best person you should have doing it for your client. So Dan specializes in that. He's been a great resource for me, for a number of other top agents in the area. So I thought it would be helpful to have him come in and just kind of spit some septic knowledge on us, so to speak. So with that, I guess we'll leave it here, and you probably have some stuff you want to talk about, and if anybody has questions, I would say just sprinkle them in if they come to mind. So,
sure. Well, let me tell you a little something about me. I have a real estate license. Got it probably way long time ago, back in the 90s. I started out in a lot of things, but in real estate, and I also have a mortgage license. So I've done quite a bit of different stuff. So that's in the real estate field. The other thing is that I guess it's probably about 15, 20 years ago, so the mortgage companies were beginning to start requiring septic inspections along with I don't even know what the home inspections were required, but they were getting requests to do septic inspections. So at that time, the home inspector was doing the septic inspections, and it really was not a real good inspection. It's a dye test where they would put dye in the toilets and stuff, and then go out in the yard and look and see if it was coming up. So I went and got my license to do low pressure pipe systems. That's a low pressure pipe operator. That was before the state was mandating that you had to have a certification to actually do a septic inspection. So with that low pressure pipe license, I was having realtors ask me and mortgage companies to do septic inspections. So I was doing septic inspections years before the state said, well, we really got to be certified to do it. And the reason that too was that of the quality of work or the inspection. Mortgage companies were coming, I guess the old saying is jingle mail. I guess, have you ever heard of jingle mail? Jingle mail is back in 2008 when the economy was going bad. There was a lot of foreclosures, and people were getting into homes because there was a period of time where you could just go buy a house, keep it for a few weeks, and flip it and make a lot of money off it, and not even do anything to it. Being in the mortgage business at that time, people would come in and tell you that they qualified, and it was and Countrywide had a loan. It was an NG loan. It was no income, no assets, you didn't have to have even a job. As long as you had a 750 score, you could buy a house, and people were buying, and then the recession hit, and they couldn't afford them. But the main thing and the jingle mail was that they put their keys to the house in the mail with their payment stub and sent it back to the mortgage company. So thus you have the jingle mail, but we were finding out that a lot of the houses that were being foreclosed on, people were getting them, couldn't afford to fix them, and the main issue a lot of times was the septic system. And I always tell real estate agents the septic system can be the most expensive repair on a home. Not a roof, not a heating system, but the septic system. I've had some cases over in Durham on older homes, houses built back in the, in the 50s and the 60s, that the prices, when they bought them were in the 20s and the 30s, and now they're in the 150 and the 160, and the septic systems go bad, and they have no place to repair because it had already gone bad before, and they've used a repair area. So they're faced with, one, having to dispose of their sewage. So there's no place on the property to put a leach field to distribute the effluent into the ground. There's no city sewer available. So how do they get rid of their waste? They can't put an outdoor Don's John's in the backyard and expect it to work. So they're faced with having to have a contract with a pumping company to come pump their septic tank out every 30 days. And so it can be a very expensive ordeal. That would be like making your light payment or your mortgage payment. That's just a bill that you would have to pay. So the state came up I'm not sure what year it was, probably in the 70s, and said that every builder or every lot that was sold in North Carolina had to have a repair area. Now, at that time, it didn't say it had to be a designated repair area. It just had to be an area on the piece of property that you could make a repair.
So that means, so you're a repair field as in, you've got your lines here, this is your septic field. If that fails or becomes oversaturated, whatever the right terminology would be, you can move it to this other area.
You can move it to another area. And at that time, it could be anywhere on the property. So there's a lot of lots in Wake County and Johnston County and Franklin County that fall back in that route where they, and you can pull up a lot of permits that are in the early 80s, and on that you don't see where it says a repair. But a repair area was required, but it didn't have to be designated, okay? It was only after 1983 that the state said that every lot or every piece of property that was sold has to have a designated repair area. So on the permit for the septic, it has to be a designation. The designated repair area has to be treated just like the septic area. You can't do anything with it. You can't build on it. A lot of people put gardens and things like that, but you can't build a structure. And you have to have the 5-foot rule or 10-foot rule. So it has to be treated just like a septic. The point there is that septic systems do go bad. They fail. And if they didn't go bad, then the state wouldn't have required you to have a repair area. They would have lasted forever. So thus you have to have a repair area for, and that's one of the things we look for when we do an inspection, is to make sure that the repair area is still there. It's not been disturbed. A lot of people they can cut trees and things like that. And you can do some things, but you can't get a and we find non-permitted garages and stuff. That you look at the plat or the permit for the septic, and boom, there's a garage sitting right there on top of the repair.
So you
area.
check for that during the inspection. You'll
Yeah,
look at that.
we look at that.
Okay.
We look at that, and if it's available. Now, that's one of the things that we do, because here's what we don't want to happen: is somebody down the road come back and have a problem with the septic system, and then they say, "Well, you did my inspection, but you didn't say anything to me about a repair." And here I'm stuck that I got a garage sitting on my repair area. So first of all, you would have found out that garage wasn't permitted, because the county's not going to give you a permit to put that garage over a repair area. So thus you got two things. One, that you had to find out whether the garage was permitted. But the other is that septic systems do fail, and they can fail on a brand new home, just like they can a 30 or 40-year home. The problem with a septic inspector is that we're not supposed to use fail. That's reserved for the county. The county likes to be the ones to go out and say that it failed. So what we're looking for is any problems, any potential problems that may be at the present time, and maybe some issues that will come up in the future. So that's sort of an oversight of what we're looking for. A lot of home inspectors, like you were telling me, they offer both services. It's sort of a fine line. if you have a W-2, if you have an employee that's a W-2 employee, only the company has to have an inspection license. It's sort of crazy in a way. If you're 1099, you have to have an inspection. So some of the home inspection companies offer septic inspections, but the inspector may not be certified.
Right, because the firm
is certified.
Yeah.
So you have to look at that. Whether they're whether they've been and going through what we go through and continuing ed and stuff like that. I spend a lot of time. I take real estate continuing ed, this continuing ed. I'm in class a lot every year taking continuing ed. But the what we do, NC Septic, is somewhat a family. I have 2 sons and a grandson that work with me. I'm sort of slowing down a little bit because I'm getting a little older and I do sort of the other things, but I'm in the field with them 2 or 3 days a week. I review all the reports that go out. Our report is probably a little bit more detailed than what, and we'll pass this around. We do an evaluation. There's a state requirement, a minimum septic that you want to do, and some real estate agents, they just want to know the minimum, and that's what we can do. We can do the minimum. And Brian had asked me to come today to talk to y'all. I'm not here to push business. We do a lot of inspections. We're probably right now in the 6,000 to 7,000 inspections that we've done, and we're averaging somewhere between 15 and 20 a week. And I'm just one of many septic inspectors, and we do inspections from Burlington's probably the outer fringes of where I'm down to the coast. I live at the coast, so I'm up here, like I said, 2 or 3 days a week. But we do inspections in Moorhead, Beaufort, Goldsboro, Kinston, Rocky Mount, Goldsboro. But the majority of our inspections we do right here in the Triangle. And they can go bad.
Well, if you maintain a system, let's say it's installed properly and it's a good system, so that's the baseline, and you do maintain it. So
How do you maintain it?
Well, how do you maintain it? And if you do maintain it, how long can we expect that a septic system properly installed can last?
Well, the maintaining means that, the internet has a wealth of knowledge. If you Google septic systems, that it will tell you the do's and the don'ts. In North Carolina State, which I've printed off, you can make copies of that. Why do septic systems fail? That you asked me about what does most people ask me,
yeah.
And of course that's one of the things. How long is the system supposed to last? And so that's you can make copies of that, and it's just good information, the do's and the don'ts about what to put into the septic systems. A septic tank is a biological holding area for waste. Okay, you're only supposed to put into a septic system what is non-biodegradable stuff. You don't want to put in there plastics and things like that. They don't break down, but microbes don't like them. But your septic tank, it takes waste, and it's a retention area for the waste, for the microbes, the pathogens, the microorganisms to sort of to work on the waste, and then the waste becomes sludge that drifts to the bottom of the septic tank, and it starts from the bottom, and the sludge keeps coming up and up and up. Over the years, it will come up, and when the sludge reaches 25 to 30% of the liquid holding capacity of the tank is when you should have it pumped. If you never had to pump a tank, you wouldn't see pumping companies out here, you know. Septic systems, a family of 4 or 6, normally will have to be pumped on a 3 to 5 year basis. Now, if you're like my parents, well, we put a septic system in, and of course it's out of sight, out of mind, until you I've had people tell me, well, I've never had a problem with it, so it must be working. You know? So that's the mentality, and it doesn't mean that if a septic system hasn't been maintained or pumped in 25 or 30 years that it's bad. That doesn't mean that. It just means it's got roots into it and stuff like that. And we have inspected septic systems that are 25 and 30 and 40 years old that look as good as some that are 2 and 3 years old. So I think the things that you put into them, that doesn't break down under ordinary conditions can cause some problems with them. There's no need of putting any additives. Rid-X is, a lot of people ask me about Rid-X. Rid-X is an enzyme. So is yeast. Yeast is an enzyme. If it makes people feel a little bit better, you can put wine yeast, cooking yeast, beer yeast. You can put a bag down the commode once a month, and it doesn't do anything. What the enzyme does is it's a bacteria promoter. Believe me, in a septic tank, you've got plenty of bacteria that's already there. Some pumping companies will offer a service where they pump the tank and then they put an additive into it, which they're putting enzymes, and it turns the water a real green looking. It doesn't do anything, just costs you money. You know, you've got enough bacteria stuck to the side of that septic tank that you don't need to put any more in there. And microbes live and they die. They live and they die. But when the septic tank collects the sludge or the solids, and then it sort of retains it, and the water that you use goes into the tank, and it sort of separates out, and then it goes into another part of the tank, and then that's where it goes into your leach field. Septic tanks, as a rule, made out of concrete, are 4 inches thick. They have to be approved by the state, 5,000 pounds per square inch of impact. They don't usually go bad. What goes upside down is the drain fields. North Carolina's a bedroom state. So they classify the septic system and size the septic system by the number of bedrooms. So if you've got a 2-bedroom system, they think that the average person uses 60 gallons a day. So there's 120 gallons per day per bedroom. So if you've got a 3-bedroom home, you've got 360, 480, a 5-bedroom, 600. So that's how your tank is sized. That means the average daily water use, that system is designed to accept that into the leach field and disperse it into the ground. And that water, which is affluent when it goes over there, actually will work its way back down to the aquifer and come back up as drinking water. So that's why they want to keep it clean. You know, keep our environment, keep it clean. North Carolina has so many millions of septic systems. It's just the ground is just a good filter, and it filters out that stuff, but it doesn't filter out waste. So the waste has to be extracted from the tank and then disposed of by your treatment systems.
So before we leave the bedroom thing, is there any talk that you've heard or any expectation that they will ever change how they look at bedrooms, and you called it a bedroom state? You know, because it is about how many people are going to be living in the home, right? So if we're saying 2 people per bedroom, in the real estate world, that can get very tricky. If you have a 2-bedroom septic, it's like 3 rooms that are clearly used as bedrooms, but there's only 3 people living in the house, it should be fine. But
well, it only becomes an issue when you go to sell the home. You can take a closet, and a huge closet, and you can say, or the buyer can designate it as a bedroom. But you as a real estate agent has to go by what's on the permit.
Well, right.
That's what you have to. You said, well, it's got 4 rooms. You got a closet, and now you don't have to have a closet. You have egress, regress, and ingress. But you can have that and say, well, it's only for 3-bedroom septic system, but it's got 4 bedrooms, it's got 5 bedrooms. That's up to you, but you can't market it.
Well, right. So that's my question: is there any? Will the state? Are there other states that do it differently? And would North Carolina ever consider doing it differently? Because if we can market a home as a 3-bedroom home, but say it has a 4-person septic, which would be currently a 2-bedroom septic.
Mm-hmm.
But we could advertise it as a 3-bedroom home and say it's a 4-person septic. We can't do that right now, and so I didn't know if in any of the CEs, does North Carolina, does it ever come up that they would change the way that they describe these septics and do it as on a person basis instead of a bedroom basis?
Well, that would have to be done by the Real Estate Commission on how they would view that. As far as the North Carolina Septic Tank Association and the governing body that governs that, the tanks are sized, and it's the average person probably doesn't use 60 gallons a day. And believe me, if you say you had a 3-bedroom home, which is the standard, 360 gallons a day, that's a lot of water, and the system is designed to take 360 gallons a day, but most of them, if you do that, you're taxing the system. It's designed to be able to take 360 gallons a day, but I don't think they really mean that you should be using 360 gallons a day every day, because one, you can oversaturate that system, and that's the main thing that we're seeing now. And when we have a lot of rain, bad weather, we have 2 or 3 or 4 inches of rain at one time, the ground becomes saturated, and you have to understand these leach fields are ditches. They're typically 3 foot wide, they're 2 foot deep, and they have some type of media into it, from gravel to polystyrene aggregates. They're using tire chips. They're just using a lot of things so that the microbes can attach to those and sort of filter themselves out. But when you start getting 300 foot of ditches, 3 foot wide, and do the math onto it, you're probably looking at 1,200 square feet of holding area before the water leaches into the ground. But if the water level comes up, say halfway or within 5 or 6 inches of the top of the soil, and then you're putting water into it, it can't take it. So that's when you start hearing the gurgling in the tubs and the commodes not flushing properly and stuff like that. But if you wait a few days, people think they got a huge problem. And pumping companies really are your best friend at that particular time, because they can come and pump that tank out. And those tanks hold anywhere between 1,000 to 1,200 gallons. Your 4 and 5 bedroom homes are 1,200, 1,500 gallons. So they can pump those out. And if you're using, let's say you've got 6 people in the home, what is that? 360 gallons a day. So you got a 1,000-gallon tank. You're really only looking at a couple of days, for you to be calling the pumping company and have them come pump it again. So you somewhat have to be very conservative when the water usage during periods of very wet and rainy period. And believe me, new systems sometimes will become oversaturated just as fast as older systems will.
So on new systems, is there any reason to have, like for new construction that has a septic tank, is there any reason to have that septic tank inspected, or should we just assume that it was just inspected by the county and it's okay?
Well, everybody knows what assume means.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. So I get.
That's why I tossed you up
We get the question all the time, and I sort of relate it to like having a 3-year-old and dangling a cookie in front of it. I'm a septic inspector, so I'm going to say, yeah, absolutely, I think we should have it inspected. But on the other hand, you have to be realistic. You would think that because it is a new home and it has been inspected by the county, that it should be fine. I'll give you a couple examples of some new homes that have never been lived in that we've done inspections on. One, we found out that the sheetrockers had, there's a little white clean out that sticks up out of the ground between the house and the septic tank. Newer homes had to have those. And the sheetrocker said, well, where can we put this mud? Unscrew that cap, pour that mud down that cap. So all of a sudden you're looking at the inside of the tank and you're taking pictures of the inlet pipe, and there's all this white sheetrock mud that has solidified, because when it hits water it solidifies, and you can put sheetrock mud underneath the water and it stays there for an awful long time. So yeah, that was an issue that we saw, and the other one was an issue where it had never been hooked up. The septic tank installation company is licensed to, and most of them are plumbers, but have a plumbing license. But normally there's a plumber that connects the trunk line from the home to the septic tank. The septic installer sets the tank where the county says it can go. They get the lines right, they get all that, and they leave it uncovered for the county to come and look at the lines. They look at the septic tank. They want to make sure that tank is level and not listing one way or the other. And they also want to make sure that the boots are correct and that the line is going into it. Sometimes these tanks are inspected before the plumber gets out there and does his thing. So we had an inspection that we did a year or so ago. That it was a pump system, and I know you got questions about different types of septic systems, but this was a regular gravity fed system. I mean, I'm sorry, it was a pump system, so it had two tanks. So you have a septic tank that collects the waste from the house, and then you have another tank in a pump system that the effluent goes over to, and it's merely as a capture area to capture the effluent from the home, the wastewater. And then there's a pump, and those systems are for pumping the effluent to an area that is higher than what your septic system is. So it's sort of like a lift station, but it lifts it up and puts it into another area. Well, when we checked the septic tank, we found we normally, our inspection starts at the septic system. We're not responsible for going in the home and flushing the commodes and making sure that the flow is right. Our inspection starts from the system out, okay? But if it's got a clean out, we'll normally, because of the sheetrock, put a water hose down it and just make sure we got water coming in. We're doing it at the same time that the home inspection is going on. They're using a lot of water anyway, so we can tell that. But this particular home's brand new. They never hooked up the trunk line to the septic tank. They ran it straight into the pump tank. So the pump tank is designed, it's really a septic tank, it just don't have waste going into it, it has waste water. But
except for this house, now it has waste going into it.
The plumber plumbed the wrong tank. Okay, now how do you do that? If you're a plumber and it's all uncovered, how do you plumb the wrong tank? Okay, I don't know. I can tell you why. It wasn't inspected. It wasn't inspected. And since that time, we have also discovered a tank that was done like 20 years ago. That same thing was done to it. They attached it to the wrong pipe. They ordered the wrong. They attached the waste. So all the waste for 20 some years had been going into the pump tank. Ironically enough, it had been working. They never had a problem with it. The pump is up off the floor of the tank. I think the code's 12 inches. Yeah, it has to be up at least 12 inches. So over the 15, 20-year period, there was just enough sludge that was sort of coming up into that and being picked up by the pump and then being shot up to the nitrification area, to the leach field, and to the distribution box, and it was full of stuff and stuff. But the tank looked brand new. It was 20 years old, underground. It had nothing in it. Had nothing in it. So these folks were sort of getting a deal. They were getting a tank that never had nothing put into it because it had to be replumbed back. Well, it does make sense to even though you would think that you wouldn't have to do that. And all we're looking at is just we charge the same because we have to do the same work and doing the inspection. So, yeah.
But where it's plumbed to the pump tank, if there were more people in the house, if there was more solids going into that tank, that would have been a problem, right? 'Cause
Eventually, it would have been a problem. Fortunately, it was not a problem, but it very well could have been a big problem because one, the pump, the affluent pumps are not grinder pumps. If you have a bathroom that's on the lower level and it's pumping waste up to a septic tank, there's a different pump that you use. It's a pump that grinds waste up and mixes it all up into a sludge or liquid and then pumps it into the septic tank. But the affluent pumps are not designed there. They have plastic impellers into them. And that's why non-biodegradable stuff going into a septic tank, especially a tank that is a pump system, can eventually cause some issues because that pump will suck that stuff up into it and it will clog those impellers. And then the pump will stop working. And when it does stop working, the water, you don't know it. You keep using the water goes into the pump tank, and then all of a sudden there's a little red light out in the yard. It goes beep, 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 beep. And then what? What is this? And so that alarm is there to let you know that you've got you've got a problem. And the systems are designed, like I said, we go back to the bedrooms. The floats are in pump systems are designed, and the size of the tank is all designed on the size of the bedrooms, not the size of the bedrooms, but the number of bedrooms that you have in the home. So if you've got a 3-bedroom home and you got a pump system, and that alarm goes off Friday afternoon at 6 o'clock, you may have a problem getting somebody out there until Monday. So you've got to have enough area to store the water that you're going to use. You still need to be conservative, but everything is set. Code sets everything. 3 bedrooms, I think it's 24 hours. And you can set them a little bit more and give you a little bit more time to get somebody out. But if you have a pump system and that alarm goes off, it's not something you go out and cut off. A lot of people have alarms in the laundry rooms or the garages or little boxes that sit up there with a little light onto them, and they'll go off and they'll make a lot of noise and they'll unplug them. And it goes away until about 2 days later, and then they got a problem. But then when it's fixed, pumping company comes out, resets everything. They don't plug that alarm back in. We see a lot of them that when we raise the float, we don't hear anything if the alarm is inside the house. Now, if the alarm is sitting on the box outside, everything now after 2000 and I think 10 or 11, I'm not sure the exact date, has to have the exterior alarm and the float as one unit.
Well, can I ask you, if we're showing buyers homes and we come to a home that has a pump system, so to describe that, I'm not quite sure how, you just said there are 2 different ways that it can be pumped up.
The topography.
Yes, the photography of the property. You've got to have a level of. I use the old saying that crap don't roll uphill.
Right.
So it's the same thing. Water is not going to roll uphill. So you've got to get the wastewater from down here to up here, to where it's a level area where it can be absorbed into the ground and get rid of that. So thus you have to have 2 tanks to do that. In some lots, and then you get into innovative systems, which are engineered design systems where you've got multiple septic tanks. You have ultraviolet lights. You have aeration systems. We did one Saturday out close to Lake, the Jordan Lake. That was an engineered system. It was a fairly old system, probably about 10 or 12 years old. And you have to have an operator. You have to have what they call an ORC, which is an operator in charge. They have to be on standby 24 hours a day. So you can't have one, you got to have 2. Most of the time the homeowners, one of the homeowners will go take the course and get familiar with the issue. And then the state comes every so often and re-inspects it, and you've got to have all the paperwork and stuff like that. But their leach field, their area where they wanted to build, the 4 or 5 acres that they wanted to build on, was not very susceptible to a conventional septic system. So you had to go to an alternative way of disposing of your waste, other than having a pumping company on standby every week to come pump your tank out. So how you get rid of it, North Carolina has done a lot of research on disposing of waste, and there's a lot of new and innovative and technical type of systems. And truly, some people, you hear pricing of $25,000 and $30,000 for a septic system. Some can be more. Some can be more. And that's why I go back to the thing in Durham where they've used, and there's probably cases here, that there's no repair area. You either condemn the house, tear it down, do whatever, or figure out a way to get rid of the waste. And one, you can, we've seen lots that are not much bigger than the footprint of this building here, that have boxes that look like trash compactors, big ones, on top of the ground, that the waste is going through. This one Saturday, there was 2 big sand pits, concrete things in the backyard, the woods, and they disguise it, but the effluent was pumped out of the tank and sprayed over the sand, and it filtered through the sand until it got to the bottom of the sandbox, and then it was captured and it went to another tank. That tank had an ATU unit, which is it's an ultraviolet light, and it's an aerator. So it aerates everything in there and circles it, and then it shoots it with like a hot tub, ultraviolet light. And then from there it goes into another tank that has a pump into it, and then it goes into the woods, and there's little water hoses, like you would water your yard. What's the ones that spray? Not soaker hoses, but and little pipes have orifices into them, and so when the pump comes on, it sprays the water on top of the ground into an area into the woods. And of course, that area has to be blocked off with a fence and have a sign up there. There's a septic system and stuff like that. That system on a house that was selling for $200,000 was probably a $30,000 septic system.
I thought you were going to say this was like multi-million-dollar house.
No. Those folks, this log cabin, they wanted to build on that particular lot, and the only way they could do it was to come up with that type of system. And to them, it was worth it. And those systems do cost you to maintain, because, and one little part I forgot was it does have a chlorinator into it. So it's really, they don't want you, especially in that area up there, because it's sensitive.
That's a watershed
area? Jordan, Falls Lake, anything around those lakes, they're very careful in the type of system, naturally, because it's our drinking water.
Right, so the county is who dictates the system?
Well, actually, that system there moves out of the county's hands and goes to the state, the Department of Water Quality, which is a department of the government, and it's its own division. It's the North Carolina Department of Water Quality. And that's what I'm going. I've got a copy here of all the rules and regulations and inspections there.
Would they also determine how many rooms? I don't know how many bedrooms the house would perk for.
Well, the first step would be the builder or the person wanting the home would apply for a permit for 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, and then it goes from there through the process of permitting. I always tell people, if you want a 4-bedroom home and you're in an area like that, ask for 5. Because I'm not going to give you 5, I'll give you 4. If you ask for a 4, I'm probably going to give you a 3. So, you sort of ask a little bit more than what you're, because it is a sensitive area, and they're very particular on what goes up.
Now, how hard is it to change a septic system, or is it possible to change it from a 2 or 3 bedroom to enlarge the system?
Yeah, it's a simple thing to do as far as install, if you've got the room
If
to do it,
it's-
but to get the permitting to do it, it can be difficult. It can be
Right.
difficult.
And they
It
could
depends
shut
on
it
the-
down and say, no. you know.
Well, yeah, and the thing about, it just depends on the property. It depends on how it, and now they don't do leach tests. You know, now they're soil scientists. You
Right.
know, they take the dirt and rub it in their hands and smell of it, and then they can tell you whether, you know, what kind of soil that you have. It's amazing. North Carolina has, from the mountains to the coast, there's, I don't know, there's a great deal of different types of soil. And if you go to these continuing eds and stuff, you've got people from every county. North Carolina has 100 counties, and in the 100 counties, every one of them got different soil. But it's amazing, and they'll take soil from different areas, Piedmont, coastal, triad, or the mountains area, and they'll take samples of the soil and put into a box, and there's a questionnaire that can you tell what this soil is, and not only what it is, where did it come from? And
Wow.
and you'll be amazed that the percentage is close to 100%. That these guys can tell you what it is and where it came from.
I have a question about the repair field. So if they're looking at a home that has a septic system and there's a repair field design, and they say, well, can we put a deck over that, or can we put a driveway over that, or can we put a patio over that? What can they put over the repair field, knowing if it's needed, will have to be jacked out?
Well, it's the means of attachment, and that's how we address it in the report. Technically, you're not supposed to do anything to a repair field, but people think that there's a big area sitting out there that I can do something with. Things like patios and driveways are one that you really don't want to, because the soil, if you compact the soil, then it's not going to do the job, and that's what they don't want you to do. They don't want you compacting that soil. Leach fields, not only, I'd say 95% of the water is absorbed into the ground, but some of it's evaporated out. So if you've got a shed or something like that sitting on top of it, you're losing that part of the evaporation. The grass pulls some of it out. So that's why they don't want you putting anything onto them. But people do put patios.
You mean on the main field or the future
Or
repair
the
field?
repair field. They put gardens into
Yeah.
them and stuff like that. As long as they understand that we're gonna put it in the report that, you know, they're utilizing the part of the a repair field if necessary. And normally the way we will address a building is, a lot of times these are Lowe's buildings or Home Depot buildings that are brought in with flatbed trucks and stuff. One is how did they get there? They didn't bring it in with a drone and drop it. So they drove over the drain field to get there. So a lot of times that's in the report too. Driving over a drain field is not recommended at all. Having a driveway is really taboo. But to access the back part of a piece of property and you don't have no other way to get there, if you do it occasionally, it's not a big deal. But if you're using it all the time as a driveway, you can present a problem. But we just did one, well, we do them all the time. It's under decks. It's under decks. And the first thing I'm going to say, well, the deck's not permitted. Show me the permit for the deck. Because if the county said, okay, it's all right, then there should be a variance. And it should accompany the permit. And I can bet you, I haven't seen many. Now, we got a situation where an FHA loans, you can't be against any code. We got a screen porch that the support post is within the 5-foot setback. 5 foot. You can't have any structure within 5 feet of a septic system. That's counting the septic tank, the drain field, the D-box, within 5 feet. 5 feet is pretty close, like this table. So you can get pretty close to these things. But it's 18 inches. It wasn't permitted. The county's not going to let them do that. So it's got to be removed, or they just got to find another home. Or the county can come out and give an issue of variance. They're probably not going to do that.
Is it likely the county's going to make them move that? I mean, if the deck was built over, is the county gonna come out and say, you gotta?
They're not, they're not gonna make, no, they're not gonna make them move it, but then the mortgage company's not gonna give them the loan.
Yeah.
So, you know, either they do move it, the county's not gonna say anything. Well, the county, Johnston County will tell you, they're not gonna get between a real estate transaction and something that is an issue with a septic system. You know, it is what it is. It's up to them if they want to continue on with it. If the deck's built over the tank, we're not going to make them move it. You know, they just didn't get a permit to build the deck. They should go down and get a permit. Most likely, they're not going to give them a permit. Septic tanks sometimes are moved. We've had a couple of instances where the seller had to move the tank. Moving the tank to another location was a lot more economical than it was tearing down a structure that was built. Now, if you could prove that the county issued a permit and they did the proper inspections onto it and it still wasn't the code, then I think you may have some type of recourse there. But you know, that's.
Let me ask you a question about leak tests. And so is that something, where do leak tests come in? Are they infallible? So if you add water to it, and if it goes down a certain amount in 24 hours?
Well, here, the way we look at leak tests, probably every septic tank that's over 20 years old probably leaks. Some way or another. Tanks are too soon. Your older tanks are one thing, but most tanks are too soon. So you've got a top part and you've got a bottom part, and they're attached together with a neoprene buoy or some type of filler that sort of glues these tanks together. So if they're underground and they've got water sitting on top of them, and water weighs just about 8 pounds a gallon, isn't it? 7 point something, might be 8 point something. Anyway, so you got 300 or 400 gallons sitting on top of this seam. Just the pressure alone and the weight of the water could probably ooze a little bit out.
When it's concrete,
So
it's porous, right?
Well, it's porous, but it's only going to be porous it's going to get saturated after a while. That's it. You know, and you're going to get some sweating a little bit. But my theory on a tank leaking is that a little bit of effluent leaking out here, opposed to you putting it into a drain field up here, is somewhat on the same line. The state doesn't look at it that way because they want that extra area to purify that water before it works its way down to your drinking water or the aquifers or whatever. So they don't like tanks leaking, but most of them that are that age do leak. Getting to the leak down test is that if we go out and we inspect a septic system that's been sitting vacant for a reasonable time, being 3 months and older, and it's in an area where we got woods, open up the tank and there's fewer roots that are down in the tank. So you've got nothing going into the tank at all. The house is vacant, there's nothing going into it, but yet you've got some roots dangling down there inside of the tank that's pulling water out of it. And then you've got maybe a little bit of leakage around the sink. So when you go look at that tank, bingo, it's down 3 inches or 4 inches. And we do the same thing. It depends on how far down with us. If it's 3 or 4 inches and it's been 2 or 3 months, it's probably just going to say that it's evaporation. Because you do have evaporation through the stacks of the house. So you got some evaporation. You got the roots, you got evaporation, you got a little bit of. So a septic tank with nothing going into it doesn't stand a chance. You know, it's going to be down. So you put in the report that it possibly could be leaking, but it's not out of the ordinary to have low effluent levels in a tank on a home that's been sitting vacant. If it's 6 or 8 inches down and it's only been 3 or 4 months, we'll put that a leak down test is suggested. Now, what a leak down test is, there's a protocol for it. You fill the tank back up to the invert of the outlet, okay? And then you let it sit for 24 hours. If it leaks down more than 1.5 inches in that 24-hour period, a leak is suspected, but then there's one more step. You fill the tank back up while you're there and wait an hour. And if it drops more than 1/2 inch, it's leaking. Tanks do absorb water. So if you've got a tank that's been sitting 3 or 4 months and you go out there and fill it up with water and come back 24 hours later, it's probably still going to be down. May not be down as much, but it's going to be down some. So leak down test is, and then you got the decision to make, well, do I want a new tank?
Well, right. So can you repair? So so let's say you do it, it's down 2 inches after 24 hours, and you say, okay, we think there's a leak. Can you do the additional test, and it goes down 1/2 inch, and you think you have a leak? Do you have everything pumped out, and somebody goes in there and looks at making a repair?
Okay. There's companies that do that. I think that I personally think that's a Band-Aid. I think hydrojetting lines to clean out sludge and stuff is a temporary fix. I think that if you've got a leak in a seam now, it's 20 years old, you're probably going to have a leak again in 4 or 5 years. But you know, it's all it's just hard to tell. You know, the way they do it is you pump the tank down, and there's some companies that will go in and they'll either sure wall the areas, and they say.
So if you're replacing a typical tank, there's nothing weird going on. It's a 1,000-gallon tank. It's got a leak in it, and you're replacing that. What does that cost? And do you need, at that time, are you also replacing the leach field, the lines?
Well, it depends on what and all is wrong with it. If the tank is the only thing that's wrong, that's all they're going to permit. The county doesn't want you messing with those lines, not unless you've got a really big problem. Because think about it, if you have to go put new lines in, you're also using the repair area. So down the road, if another repair is necessary, you got an issue that you might be able to go back.
I was going to say, does that original leach field ever
you
cure?
could, it does. It cleans itself up. Back in the early 2000s, I guess, Wake County and Mecklenburg County, there was a couple of counties that if you had an innovative system, in other words, if you had a low-pressure pipe system or a drip system or a spray system, you actually had to put in the repair area at the same time. In other words, you had to put both systems in. I think they probably stopped that because we do inspections on, and then you alternate, you know, that you might, especially if it falls late. There's systems up there that you'll use this system for a year and then alternate it. You got a dual turn valve. You go out there and just turn it, and everything goes to this system. So they're alternating between the two systems. But a lot of times, if you just replace the tank and not replace the drain field.
And what is that? A few $1,000s?
We don't do any. We don't do any installs, even though we have license to do it all. But a 1,000-gallon tank, depending on how accessible it is, where you don't have to take chain link fences down and move stuff. You can just go back there with a small backhoe and excavate it, and they'll usually crush the old tank. You don't take the old tank up. If there's room, you go right beside of it. You have to disable it. They don't want you using it for anything else. So you have to crush it and fill it. And most of the time it's filled with the dirt that you're going to take out for the new tank and put in the old tank. And those, if you went down to Mitchell's at Smithfield and said, I want a 1,000-gallon septic tank, you're probably looking at $1,100.
That's installed, or that's just
the tank? The tank sitting in the yard over there is about $1,100.
But to actually
But
install
probably
it.
about $2,500. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's not the end of the world. Like, I mean, I think of a septic tank having to replace it, it's this, $6,000-7,000 venture.
A regular gravity-fed system with, say a 3-bedroom home with a 1,000-gallon tank and 300-foot lines, and everything's in a perfect world. It's flat. It's out here in Johnston County where it's all bean fields and tobacco and stuff, and you can just scrape off the top level and put it in the ground. You might get it done for $4,500. You know, maybe it's not Johnston County, it's more in the Wake County. But if you get down in the rural areas, you get the pricing. It's competitive.
Yeah.
So it's not that much. Now, if you have to go to a pump system, then you can add a couple more $1,000, maybe $3,000 or $4,000 more to it, because you're talking about a tank, pump, all the hardware that goes to it. And if you get into the drip systems, you can, you know.
So, can I ask a real quick question?
Yes.
Technical thing. You did an inspection for me about a week ago, and you were talking about
Did I meet you out there? Did you look familiar?
No, I did see you last year, so that one though. This was a 208 release circle.
Okay.
Nice flat drag, right, and everything. But you were talking about the baffle T, and I've seen that come up in basically all your reports about, you know,
Or a sanitary tea, is that
the
the same?
sanitary T.
Well, the baffle T and sanitary is somewhat one of the same. In the older tanks, up until January of 1999, tanks before that time, and of course then before in the 60s and the 50s, they were all different. But they had a concrete bathroom on the outside. Tanks had to be a two-chamber tank. In other words, you had two compartments. You had an in compartment and an out compartment. And over the years, they've toyed with different sizes of the compartments and stuff. And they've come up with that usually the inlet size is about 2/3, and then the outlet size a third. The older baffles were concrete, and they're somewhat precast, so they didn't cure as well as the perimeter of the tank. The hydrogen sulfide and methane gas that's in the tank has a tendency to eat those baffles. And what the baffle does is that it sort of acts as a dam that keeps the scum,
on one
the
side.
fats and greases and the things that float on top of the effluent before the microbes have the time to attack it from the bottom and it drifts down and becomes sludge. It floats. And so the water in the tank does have some movement to it. Every time you push water into it, it creates movement. And you have a baffle wall that really keeps all that stuff over on this one side of the tank. But then when it crosses over and gets in the area where it's basically wastewater, you still are going to have some things that may float up. And so that's what that baffle is doing. It's sort of as another fail-safe to keep those things from drifting over into the distribution box and being dispersed into your drain field, which that can clog your ability for the water to be absorbed into the ground. So those baffles, if they are deteriorated any at all, we put in there that because of the extensive corrosion and deterioration, we recommend. We never tell anybody they got to do anything.
Right.
You know, all of our stuff is a recommendation. If the tank's got a hole into it and there's no, and it needs to be replaced, we'll probably put in there that we're not going to say, well, we recommend that the tank be replaced. We're going to probably put in there it does need to be replaced. But the baffles, if it's corroded enough down to where it's below the invert of the outlet, when we're talking invert, we're talking a round pipe, the bottom part of that pipe. If it's corroded down below it, then we put in there that it should be replaced. Okay, and what do you replace it with? Do you go back with concrete? Well, no. What they use now is a PVC-T, which is called the sanitary T. Okay, and that PVC-T has to have an effluent filter. There's another that keeping stuff out of the drain field is key to a septic system lasting a long time. Okay, so that's why you've got all these little things to keep the sludge and the things that's suspended solids. You remember your chemistry, you can boil water and dissolve sugars and stuff, and it's suspended into the liquid. Same thing with waste, it gets suspended. But after a while, it's going to reach a point of saturation, and it's going to, yeah. So the baffle tee is designed to stop that. But if it's corroded down where it's going over into it is when it has to be replaced. And the filters are sort of a pain.
Now you hose those off when you.
You hose them off with water. The filters are made out of plastics, and they last a pretty long time. Years ago, there were companies that installed septic systems, and when they changed the rules and said that in January of 1999, the rules changed. The rule says that every septic tank put in the state of North Carolina had to be equipped with an outlet PVC sanitary tee with an effluent filter or strainer. It's a sort of controversy on whether it's a strainer or whether it's a filter. The end result still, they both do the same thing. Yeah. Some companies, and it started in the end of '97 and the end of '98, suggesting that the manufacturers start transitioning over to manufacturing these tanks that meet this criteria. But as inventory goes, in a lot of manufacturing, they had a lot of inventory that were the old systems, so they sort of gave them a couple of years to clear their inventory before they actually started. And so you'll see some tanks today that are put in that don't have the baffle, that has the PVC tee, but they didn't put the filter into it. Some of the installers in Wake County thought the filters were just a pain because you do have to clean the filter more often than you pump the tank. So they were putting the filters into the PVC tee, getting it inspected, and then taking the filter out. They would buy one filter. Now we're talking a $25 item. They take the filter out, go to the next job, put the tank in, put the filter in. Wake County's inspector, not Sullivan, but I can't think of his name, he's retired now, got on to them, and he started taking a magic marker and putting the date. And we have got pictures of tees that we've pulled out of tanks to have those dates on to them. Actually, he would put the date and the address of the property because he knew that's what they were doing.
So can the homeowner? I mean, is that
It's something you do.
accessible?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why the risers are important. They want to make it. If you bury this tank 2 feet in the ground or a foot, and you've got a filter there, and you know most people don't clean these filters, and then they experience the backup, and they think, well, my septic tank's I've got problems. You know, my tank will go out there and pull the cover off of it, and the filter's clogged up. They got dogs and cats and stuff, and it's full of stuff, and it clogs up, and thus it backs up everything. And in reality, there's nothing wrong with the septic system. It's just a $20 filter that's clogged, and just a water hose will clean it off. And so they make it easy. That's why Wake County has their rule is that you have to have a riser onto it.
Cool.
Oh,
Any other questions?
Now we can go
Feel like
eat.
I'm a pro
We're gonna eat. But yeah, it's I brought. You can make copies of this, and you go online and get this.
Yeah, and I'll scan all that stuff in too, so you have it.
And this is the rules. There are certain rules that we have to abide by, and it tells in here what we are supposed to inspect, and what we don't have to inspect, and it's all done within reason too. Is that if you can't find a distribution box, then you can't inspect it. But the rule says that a distribution box is part of the inspection, and if you don't uncover it, you should have other means of inspecting. Well, that's the verbiage of other means. Other means meaning what? A camera, a scoping camera. We're just walking over the top of it and see if it crushes in, you know. So it's sort of a vague thing, but if you can't find it, and sometimes we can't, especially in pump systems, because we can't follow the line out. You know, usually if it's a 2 or 3 inch pipe coming out, we can probe that line and usually find a D-box. But if it's a 2 inch supply pipe that's going up on a hill somewhere, you know, 30, 40 yards away, not unless it's a surface thing and we can actually see it, we most of the time we can't find it. And we'll put that in the report that it wasn't found. It just, you know, it just wasn't found. And the guy that comes behind me may get lucky and he may just walk right up there and stick a probe in it and hit it, you know. So that's always a possibility. I know if you have inspections through other inspectors, some do, some don't require pre-contractual agreements. We're supposed to. We don't in every case. I shouldn't say that on being filmed.
Yeah, you do it every case. I'm sure you do.
But yeah, it's one of those things that they want you to, you know, the homeowner, the seller, should know.
Supposed to approve it.
Should know. The other thing a question that we get asked a lot is, do we require it to be pumped? We do not require it to be pumped.
That's a good question.
We have found, and how can you can do a complete septic tank inspection if it's full? Well, you can't. But you can do a lot of things that will tell you whether it's got a crack into it or it's leaking. If I go out, if you have a tank pump, and I go out there and it's empty, and let's say it's been sitting vacant for 6 months, or sitting vacant a year, but the seller pumps it. Not unless I fill that tank back up and come back 2 days later, I don't know whether it's leaking.
Right.
But if I go out there and it is vacant, and it is full, and the effluent level's down 3 or 4 inches, then I'm going to suspect that it could be leaking.
Well, what if it's not vacant? I mean, will you be able
Well,
to...
if it's vacant, if it's not vacant and it's down,
Is it likely to be down?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but if there's a leak, can that be masked by the fact that it's being lived in and liquid's being put in there? You wouldn't know it necessarily. You know?
See, so pumping is something that, you know, you're sort of looking for cracks is what you're looking for by pumping.
Do you guys actually get into a tank?
No.
If it's, yeah, okay.
There's you get into OSHA stuff with confined spaces. You've got to the companies that go down in these tanks, they have to meet the you know, they have to have the straps, they have to be aerated. It's 2 or 3 man. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty much regulated on what you can do inside the tank. All tanks, the tank yards are inspected by the state of North Carolina on a regular basis. They fill these tanks up, sitting out there. They run compression tests onto them. They run smoke tests onto them. Normally, your suppliers for these tanks are those tanks are good. It should be.
All right, very good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you would you tell a homeowner you have a permit for like 2 bedrooms and you have 4 bedrooms in the house and you want to change that permit? What procedures he goes to, if possible, and what the cost might be?
Well, you would have to go to the county and ask them to reclassify the property. You would have to ask them that, and then you would have to add on to the septic system, because the septic system initially would have been designed for that 2 or 3 bedroom home. Two bedrooms are sort of functional obsolescence, so most of those have probably been updated. But you would have to go and ask them to evaluate the soil and see if you could technically add on enough nitrification area. And if the tank's a 900-gallon tank, you could do a 3 bedroom. Now, I think that they require 1,000. But if you've already got one there, there's a good possibility that you could add a line to it. But you also, when you do that, your repair area has to increase from the 2 bedroom repair area to the 3 bedroom repair area, or 4 bedrooms to, repair. So you not only have to have enough room to do this one item to increase it, you have to have the same equal amount, in case you have to have a roof.
But it all starts going to the county environmental department.
And they're pretty good. They're okay to. They'll look at it. They want you to. And if they do say that you've got enough area there, it depends on the age of your tank whether they will let you add on to what you've got there or replace everything. So if you've got a predated tank that's got a concrete baffle, I know single chamber tanks. If you have a single chamber, if you have an older home with a single chamber tank and you have a problem with your leach field and you have to put in your drain field, they'll make you replace the septic tank. They want you to bring everything up to the day standard. They're not going to let you patch different things with an antiquated system.
How old are we talking? How old is?
Well, single chamber tanks sort of, houses that early 80s, 70s. 70s had a small chamber and a small outlet side. Mostly 60s. It's going to be single chamber tanks. Yeah.
What's the cost? I mean, Rob, do you know what, like, to have the county come out and do that soil suitability to figure out if you can upgrade it, and then what's the timeline to get that done? I'm just thinking from a real estate transaction perspective, because a buyer may look at a 2-bedroom septic permit home and say, well, I would buy it if I can get the county to agree to make this 3 bedrooms. Any idea what start to finish that kind of looks like to get it?
Yeah, well, it depends on how busy they are, and there's a lot of buildings still, going on now. Maybe in rural counties, you could probably walk it through, but in Wake County, you're probably looking at a month. You certainly are going to be, not unless your due diligence period is going to, go that long. You're probably not going to be able to get it through. And then
I've heard that, for example, if it was permitted for a 3-bedroom house, then it's assumed double occupancy per bedroom, so that would be 6 people, 2 people per bedroom. So it's designed to accommodate a living occupancy of 6 people for a 3-bedroom. So if they had 3 bedroom in the office, that could be a bedroom, and the house can contain the 5 people adequately. It's designed for that. It's just,
But we can't
the
market
nomenclature, we can't market it as that.
you can put, okay, I go back to my real estate, and I haven't done real estate in years, but I do my continuing ed.
Good point.
Which I haven't done yet. I plan to do it. I wait till the deadline, where it's got like 1 day left to do it. But I don't work for a brokerage, so I don't have to, I don't sell real estate, so I don't fall into that. But you can, I think the real estate is that you can have, it's 2 people per bedroom, and they can be of the same sex until they're 10 years old or 12 years. There's actually an age there that there should be a separation there, and it should be. But there's 2. North Carolina's a 2-bed is the bedroom. So the permitting is done by the bedrooms that the permit is issued under. I don't know how most states do that. And you were asking that question: could the possibility of being changed? But let's say that you got a basement and they finish off that basement. You got umpteen rooms down there, and you want to put a couple more bedrooms there. The county probably will give you a permit to finish those if you're going to get a permit to do the electrical and do the plumbing. But they're not going to let you count it on paper as a bedroom. Right. Okay, it's going to either be. I built a home, and it was 4 bedrooms, but I wanted 5 bedrooms, and they would not. And I had 5 acres of land. Wake County, for some reason, and it perked everywhere. I could have divided that 5 acres up into multiple sections, but Wake County said they were not going to give me a 5-bedroom permit. They gave me a 4-bedroom permit, and he said right there and says you can take that, just classify one of them as a study. So if you present them with your prints, and it's got 5 bedrooms on it, and you only got a 4-bedroom permit, you got to change something on that drawing. You got to white it out. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy, but understand if you put 10 or 12 people into a home that's designed for 6 people, you're gonna have a problem. Especially if they're girls.
Yeah. But that's where I
They wash a lot of clothes, is what I'm getting to. A lot of, I know my daughter was, when she got married and left, she was the last one that left, and my wife and I were sitting at the kitchen table and we were talking. I said, listen. And I said, listen, what? I said, just listen. She said, well, I don't hear anything. So I said, that's my point. Because the dryer went all the time. It just, 24/7, my daughter was throwing something in that dryer, to take wrinkles out, I guess, that stuff. So yeah, you have to, if you've got, you've got to know what the septic system is designed to take, and even though they're classified as the 3-bedrooms or 4-bedroom systems, that doesn't mean that during a hurricane, and we've got 4 or 5 days of rainy weather, that system's going to function on 300 gallons a day, or 300 or 360 or whatever it is. You're going to get issues with it.
Tell everybody to run outside and go pee-pee.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all having me. And if you, I know I'll do your inspections for you. If you've got your own